How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
To the flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Anyway, I'm going to act really surprised like the listeners just walked in. Oh, well, hello. Welcome to Cinema Shock. This is the show that digs deep into your stories behind your favorite cult and genre movies. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
Hey, I'm the other host, Justin Bishop.
And I'm Todd A. Davis, here to remind you that I'm already at your house right now. Would it kill you to run the vacuum once in a while? And why do you have so much NCIS on your DVR?
Who has a DVR?
It's 1997, Justin.
Okay.
People that aren't listening to a podcast.
Anyways, we are continuing our series, David Lynch, Between Two Worlds, diving deeper into Lynch's later, stranger films.
So far, we've talked about where Lost Highway came from, those fragments of ideas, the OJ trial inspiration, Barry Gifford, who co-wrote it, and that absolutely bonkers cast that Lynch put together. But now it's time to roll cameras. We're heading behind the scenes to look at how Lynch shot the film, how Peter Deming gave it its queasy, oppressive look, and how Lynch's own house got transformed into Fred and Renee's little domestic nightmare. And just a quick reminder that if you're a member of Cinema Shock Plus, then you're getting the whole Lost Highway deep dive in one go. You could have already had this episode a week ago, right? A week and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And not only the full story, but bonus segments and all. So everyone else is hearing this in two parts, unless you're on Cinema Shock Plus. If you want that full experience, check out cinemashock.net/plus and join us. Come hang out with us.
Because we recorded this a week ago. Todd's dead now.
That's true. That's true. I passed away.
It's going to suck if something happens to Todd.
It's likely. I'm finding new injuries every day. Jeez.
I don't know. I think it's going to open a career path for me.
as a seer.
Yeah.
Gary's entering his Miss Chloe era. Is that her name? Miss Chloe?
Cleo.
Miss Cleo. She was a fake. Did you know that? She was not a, yeah.
No, I didn't foresee that.
Well, once his cast was in place, Lynch finally rolled cameras on Lost Highway. The film was the second, I believe, in his three-picture deal that he had with the French company CB2000, with Fire Walk With Me being the first one. And the production kicked off in Los Angeles at the end of 1995 with a budget of about $15 million. Behind the camera was cinematographer Peter Deming, who had first worked with Lynch on the short-lived sitcom On the Air that we talked about earlier. Horror fans, though, might know his name from somewhere else. Deming got his start working with Sam Raimi, shooting Evil Dead 2 back in the early 1980s. And that was like his second film, I believe, ever, was Evil Dead 2. Years later, he would reunite with Raimi on Drag Me to Hell. Both films, of course, that we have talked about on this show. But by the time that he teamed up with Lynch, Deming's resume was a strange mix of slapstick and splatter. He'd also shot My Cousin Vinny and Drop Dead Fred. His movie right after Lost Highway, was Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery.
Jeez.
So a little bit of a whiplash there, but that kind of made him a perfect fit for Lynch's brand of surreal darkness.
Joe Pesci could have been the mystery man.
He could have.
I would have loved that.
That would have been good.
I think we've met before, haven't we? When we was Yates. I'm fucking with you. I'm inside your house. You invited me. You took a fucking show up to places I'm not wanted, you piece of shit. Merry Christmas, little fella. We know that you're in there and that you're all alone.
I love that we're just blending all of Pesci's roles into one.
Yep.
Visually, Lynch and Deming went for a palette of browns, yellows, and reds, colors that feel sickly and oppressive. Much of the look was achieved with what Deming called a chocolate colored filter that made the blacks murky rather than pure black, the kind of darkness that just swallows characters whole. The Madison house, where much of the movie's first act takes place, was actually Lynch's own home, or at least one of his homes, actually. Known as the Pink House, Lynch had purchased it in the late 1980s, and by the time Lost Highway went into production, he had also acquired the two neighboring houses, which he converted into editing and sound facilities. Now, I believe the actual house that we see in the movie was not the one that Lynch lived in. It was one of the other two houses. This was one that was like his production facilities or something, not where he wasn't like shooting here, then going in the bedroom and sleeping at night. He was going next door and sleeping at night. So he had this whole compound that he had acquired by this point. Now, for this film, the house needed some major alterations. Production designer Patricia Norris, who had worked with Lynch since The Elephant Man, not only as a production designer, but as a costume designer. She does both. She reconfigured the space into something oppressive and uncanny. She physically lengthened the hallways of the house. She shrank the windows because Lynch wanted it to be where like you really had to work to see out of those windows, so they're really skinny and tall. She kept the ceilings low. It kind of just wanted to turn the home into a claustrophobic maze. She even dressed the interiors to emphasize shadow and absorption. She put Pullman in dark clothing. She painted the walls colors that wouldn't bounce light back, so that it always seemed kind of gray and just like a prison almost. And she outfitted the house with heavy curtains that swallowed up what little illumination there was. And above the living room couch, you'll notice a couple of paintings, and those are actually paintings by Lynch's partner at the time, Mary Sweeney, who's also a producer on this film and ends up editing this. And she furnished the space with Lynch's beloved Atomic Age style furniture, mid-century pieces with sharp lines and odd geometry. The result is a home that feels like a time capsule, both familiar and alien, as if something sinister was humming just beneath the surface.
The slot windows, I think, is how they described it. We're supposed to be like Fred's limited point of view. Like you said, it's hard to see in and out of it. And I think that the idea came from like Lynch talking about like his house when he had that message. There wasn't a window where he could see the front door to see what was happening. And so he wanted to have that kind of paranoia or whatever there. So I thought that was kind of neat. I also liked that he mixed, it was kind of auditory. Like he wanted it to seem like it was in a tiled room too, like the sound was almost getting sucked out, like so he mixed the audio himself.
He was just basically his own sound designer on this one.
But yeah, it's supposed to sound very flat and like it's in a like as though it had like acoustical tiles or whatever, that's interesting.
I hadn't thought about that while I was watching it, but you're absolutely right. The way that the sound is in this, you don't have that reverb that you normally would have in a home like that.
No natural resonance of the sound or whatever. I just thought it was kind of a neat point for him to have wanted to make with that.
That's interesting.
Those slot windows also makes me think of prison bars. Having to look through prison bars.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a fascinating looking house. I visited that house when I was in Los Angeles back in the fall, and because it was the Lost Highway house, it's very easy to find. You literally just Google Lost Highway house. It's for sale right now. The whole compound is up for sale since David Lynch, passed. His family, his will instructed them to sell all of his assets and just divide it between all of his kids so that everyone got equal payout. But they're selling that house, so that whole compound, I think for like $15 million, and it's still got all of his stuff in it. Like I've seen pictures of the inside of it, like now as it's listed, and like you go in the garage and there's paint cans everywhere that he's been painting with. And like, I almost wish somebody like obviously a very wealthy person would come in and like turn it into a museum. Although if you've driven the Hollywood Hills, there's nowhere to park. So you couldn't like turn it into like a typical, like there's nowhere for people like visitors to a museum to come park because there's street parking and then there's private drives. And that's really all there is. But it's such a stunning looking house, even in the movie, but in person, it's like, it's even with all of those other like obviously very nice, very fancy houses on Hollywood, in the Hollywood Hills, this one like stands out because of its architecture. It was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright's son designed this house. When David Lynch did his own renovations on it, he had Frank Lloyd Wright's grandson come in to oversee the renovations. So it's like, to keep in with the same style and everything. So it's, there's a lot of thought that went into that house. It's very much David Lynch's house. I mean, he lived there I think he bought it around the time of Blue Velvet. So by this time he's lived there for over a decade.
Imagine buying that house and getting haunted by David Lynch.
I mean, there are worse people to be haunted by. He would just tell you to meditate.
Yep.
But all these choices that they made and kind of reconfiguring the house and the color choices and all the design choices, this all gave Peter Deming a perfect canvas to work with. Lynch wanted one hallway in the house in particular. And if you've seen the movie, you know the one I'm talking about. But he wanted it to be so dark that Bill Pullman, when he walked into it, he would completely vanish into the darkness. So when they shot that, Deming took the film to the photo lab and he asked them to tweak it until Fred literally dissolved into the blackness, which is not something they would probably normally do. They're probably usually in the blackness, you're looking for some sort of detail, but Lynch wanted no detail. Like Deming actually told the photo lab, he told them, if I can still see him, I will never hear the end of it. Because this is what David Lynch wants. He wants him to be absorbed by that darkness. So this whole thing, this whole collaboration saw design, lighting, and film stock all working in sync, transforming in what would normally be an ordinary hallway into something really disorienting and ominous.
Deming confirmed that like it was, Lynch just kept pushing darker. He was like, this is not technically possible. Like, and I mentioned the sound earlier with the house and everything, but I kept seeing the quote from Lynch that sound is 50% at least of this experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting that he was so focused in on that with this. I guess I'm only thinking of that because of the disorientation and like the madness that you're supposed to be with this guy going through. So that you've got Badalamenti's score and Reznor making these textures over it, and then this like ambient sound that's like unsettling in the house, and just all that and just the darkness of it. It makes it like a very creepy house.
It's very, nightmarish. That dark hallway is such a striking image. Like, there's one shot where I think Pullman's on the left side of the screen, and he takes up like just a little sliver of the screen as he looks down that hallway, and all you can think is like, what the fuck is down that hallway? Yeah. Like it reminded me of the book. I don't know if you guys have read it, but House of Leaves, which is a incredible book. I would imagine David Lynch would be a big fan of it, but it's a really amazing horror story, I guess you would call it. But there's this concept of this house having these hallways that are essentially never ending, being trapped inside of this house of never ending dark hallways. I can't help but think of that image from Lost Highway when I think about that book, because that's where it goes. I mean, it's and he goes down there, Renee goes down that hallway, and they just get like swallowed up by the darkness. And you could definitely see that as a metaphor for, like you said, Fred's psyche.
Right.
Now, not everything in the film was as carefully planned as that scene. Some scenes were meticulously planned, others were not. As often happens on Lynch's film, some of the most striking images came from on-the-spot invention. In one prison scene, Lynch wanted Pullman's face to blur into nothing, like unrecognizable. So Deming defocused the camera as far as it would go, and it still wasn't enough for David Lynch. So he's like, man, David, the only other option is to just take the lens off completely. And David's like, yeah, let's do that. So that's what they did. David Lynch loved the effect. It's in the prison scene pretty early on, but there's this shot. It doesn't even have to be Bill Pullman because you can't tell who it is in the shot, because it's just like a black screen and just like a blob of light. And like you can tell it's a person sort of, but it's so out of focus that it's completely abstracted. So Lynch loved the effect. He and Deming nicknamed it whacking. I don't know why. He ended up reusing it a few different times whenever it suited the picture. In his words, he went a little whack happy, which is something that Gary can relate to.
I have nothing to say about that.
There's another moment that they improvised in the movie as well that it fascinates me that this was an improvisation, but the cabin that explodes and is on fire and then gets reversed in the film, that wasn't planned. They had found this cabin, the production found the cabin that they were going to use for the scene where they go to meet the mystery man out in the desert. And Lynch found out that the cabin was set to be demolished as soon as they got done shooting. So he's like, can we just blow it up? So they're like, hell yeah, let's, those guys on the production were like, can we blow it up? Yes, we. So they shot it and then they reversed it in post-production, I believe, but it was originally not supposed to be on fire. And it's such a striking image from the movie, such a, unforgettable image from the movie, that it's just another one of those things where Lynch got an idea and decided, let's do this and see how it works. And I feel like it works so well in the film that it feels like it was planned. It feels like it was part of the overall construction of the story. Now, other effects in the film were practical, and they got grimy with some stuff, like the transformation into Pete, where Fred transforms into Pete. A lot of people thought that was CGI. It's not. It's a mix of in-camera elements and editing room trickery. They had the makeup effects team create a fake Bill Pullman head in different parts of transition, basically. and then stuffed it with slimy brain matter of some sort. And they shot it close up and then intercut it with footage of Bill Pullman. And then editor Mary Sweeney, she said that the entire metamorphosis was basically built in the edit. There's no CGI. It's all practical. It's just edited in a way that looks so chaotic, completely constructed out of raw elements that Lynch had shot.
It seems like all of this stuff is like the perfect summary of that whole Lynch process we've talked about. Well, it's like there's this blend of this like meticulous, obsessive control on one hand, and then on the other hand, there's just like beautiful accidents.
Yeah.
You know, they just like stumble into things that seem to work. I think we kind of hit it on this, but like, I mean, they had the ability, it feels like if he wanted to use something like CG for some things, he could have done.
I'm sure he could have, but
he chose not to. And I just think that's kind of neat too.
Yeah. And he's not anti using that stuff. I mean, he'll use whatever tools he needs to create what he wants to create. He's going to, after Mulholland Drive, dive headfirst into digital filmmaking, using digital cameras at a time when digital cameras were pretty unsophisticated. He uses CGI in Twin Peaks: The Return fairly extensively, actually. So he's not opposed to using that, but it's just what works for what we're trying to do here. What tools are best for this job?
I feel like that 55-second short like really kind of cemented his thoughts of like, no, we're going to do this practical. We're going to do this in camera.
Yeah.
Or, we're going to do it in the editing room.
The closest thing to a special effect is that superimposed Mystery Man face.
Right.
That's the closest thing. And that's just like, I mean, that's a technique that's been around since the silent era.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing really that special about it.
It feels like a lot of it's done with purpose. Like it's supposed to enhance the experience a little bit. It feels like just like that they're so weird looking. Just some of the things that happen. One thing I thought about that I wanted to mention too is in the prison cell. I think it's like right before the switchover. I was noticing too that like there's like a little electrical disturbance.
Yeah, you hear that electricity.
Yeah, it made me think of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it almost is like you're reading some of my notes that I've got for our discussion later, because I thought the same thing. Like that idea of electricity that we talked about in Fire Walk with Me being like kind of a signal that there's a split in reality. Like that's a motif that we see throughout Lynch's work, but it is like it's in that scene in particular in Lost Highway for a reason, I think. Because that's when things change.
Yeah, it felt purposefully like he's linking those things. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I made the joke about the Mystery Man, or we both did, about him being like Bob or something.
Mm-hmm. So this same mix of precision and surreal ambition shows up again in the desert love scene. We talked about this early on in our discussion of Lost Highway, but that scene that's towards the end of the movie between Balthazar Getty and Arquette, where they're out in the desert in front of the car, Lynch told Deming that he only wanted certain features to register. He wanted to see their eyes, their mouths, outlines of their hair, while the rest of their bodies glowed almost featureless. They're just like bright white blobs that are vaguely human shaped, basically.
What if we had two radioactive glow sticks fucking?
So to achieve this, Deming front lit them with tungsten lamps that were meant to mimic car headlights, and then overexposed the image by more than 6 stops. It was exactly the kind of shot that cinematographers are trained not to do. You're taught this is wrong. This is not how we expose film. But the result is unforgettable. You've got two figures who look less like flesh and blood lovers than glowing phantoms locked together in this otherworldly embrace. It is not your textbook like sex scene in a movie. There's something about it that something not of this reality is happening during that scene.
This seems like a deliberate choice that these aren't two real people, and the reason it's like the peak of his manufactured fantasy that he's having, And
it's also where it ultimately breaks.
Right.
And that spirit of experimentation carried through to the film's finale as well. That climactic car chase with Fred wasn't shot like a conventional action scene. Instead, Lynch and Deming ran 2 cameras at different frame rates, then sped up the footage in post. So the result, what you typically expect from a car chase, it's not that polished slickness of a Hollywood car chase, but something harsh and jittery and almost too fast for the eye to process. It almost makes you like stressed out just looking at it. It feels very violent and unstable, as if the film stock itself is about to tear apart, which is perfectly in step with the nightmare logic of the story.
It's like a Looney Tunes chase on crack or something.
For me, I know, especially in the first half of our recording here, the jokes I made are about the weird cast and about how the story drags, doesn't make sense, yada yada yada. And in diving into this today, that's over this past week, preparing for the recording is kind of where I realized, like, at least again, I went into this not knowing anything and very much approaching it as, okay, what is the story? I think the conclusion I came to is that the story for Lost Highway is secondary. My hot take that, yes, it's directed by David Lynch, but I don't feel like this is David Lynch's movie. I feel like it's Deming's movie. Like, this is like, hey, showcase everything that is possible with a camera, and we'll put these narrative elements in it. And
Wow.
they loosely connect, but I feel like this is really a big showcase of cinematography and technique, as opposed to it's not a straightforward narrative. And that's not a surprise to anybody who's ever seen this or even remotely familiar with David Lynch's stuff. This is not a straightforward narrative. And I think that's part of why I really couldn't land on what is Lost Highway to you. I tried looking at it from different characters' perspectives and all this other things, and it just wasn't jiving for me. And I think that's what was frustrating me, was like, in trying to latch onto the narrative, you're missing the frankly very impressive technique that's on screen, even with the sound design and all that. I want to be clear, like, I don't know that that's something I'm super into, but if that's what this is, I respect it for that.
I wouldn't go so far as to say this is Peter Deming's movie. This is a David Lynch movie through and through. I mean, Peter Deming and David Lynch are working in tandem. They are working as collaborators. The techniques that Deming is using, he's doing on the orders of his director, David Lynch. Like, David Lynch is telling you, hey, take the fucking lens off the camera. That's not to diminish Peter Deming's work here. Peter Deming's work in this movie is fantastic. I think this is David Lynch's best looking movie. From a visual standpoint, I think this is my favorite David Lynch movie from a purely visual standpoint. I think it looks incredible. I love the color scheme that they're working with. I love everything about how this movie looks, and that is fully based on Peter Deming's work, but he is working under the direction of David Lynch.
Right.
And so it's still David Lynch's movie. He just has a very strong collaborator in Peter Deming on this one. So when shooting on the film wrapped in early 1996, Lost Highway moved into an unusually long post-production period. Now, as I mentioned, the houses next to Lynch's pink house had been converted into edit suites and sound facilities, so the entire process unfolded right there on Lynch's own compound. Mary Sweeney worked alongside him for over a year, piecing the film together and fine-tuning its sound design. The score once again came from Angelo Badalamenti, joined this time by British musician Barry Adamson. Now, Adamson, I wanted to look into him because I was curious how Badalamenti's always been like David Lynch's guy. Why is there basically a co-composer on this one? So Adamson had come out of the post-punk scene. He played bass with the band Magazine. He later played with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds before embarking on a solo career making moody, noir-inflected soundtrack albums. I've actually listened to a couple of these this week, and his solo stuff is really good. So Lynch was already a fan of this work, and Adamson's dark, jazzy textures fit seamlessly alongside Badalamenti's more traditional orchestral score. But the real wild card here is Trent Reznor. He's at the height of his creative powers in the mid-1990s. I mean, The Downward Spiral came out in 94, I believe, and this was probably right around the time of The Fragile. I think that was like 96, 97, right? So the Nine Inch Nails frontman invited Lynch to his studio in New Orleans, where the two collaborated on harsh industrial cues that blur the line between score and sound design. They're not quite songs, but he definitely contributed to the sound of the film. A lot of the stuff that Trent Reznor does in the film, they're played over the videotapes in the movie. Like when those like kind of harsh grinding like sounds that play over the video, like when we're watching the videotapes in the film, that's Trent Reznor. That's what he did. He also took the lead on producing the full soundtrack album for the film, pulling in songs by David Bowie, Lou Reed, the Smashing Pumpkins, Rammstein, Marilyn Manson, along with two brand new Nine Inch Nails tracks. There's The Perfect Drug and Driver Down. The Perfect Drug was a big single at the time. The video I remember seeing everywhere on MTV around this time. Manson contributed a cover of Screamin' Jay Hawkins' I Put a Spell on You, which had also been on his, I believe, debut album, as well as an original song called Apple of Sodom, while the Smashing Pumpkins' Billy Corgan wrote I specifically for the film.
I have talked to him about that song. Maybe one day he'll let me record him telling the story. But essentially, yeah, he had originally contributed a song called Tear. I mean, I don't know how he pronounces it actually. It's Tear, so it could be Tear. For that matter. But the song says Tear Me Apart at one point. So anyway, he contributed that.
It's on Adore, I think, right?
Yeah.
Was Adore already out by this time?
Adore was not out yet.
Okay.
It was out at 98. Anyway, he contributed that song. He had it ready to go. And I remember him, just because I'm a nerd, I was excited about hearing about this. But he just basically said, like, David Lynch called him. It was like, Billy, that's not going to work at all. He's like, oh. He's like, okay, what do you want? He's like, you just got to give me something different. And he's like, okay. So he had this one beat, and the beat was, feel bad taking it story, but I guess he had somebody had convinced him to write a beat for Shaq, the basketball player who was doing rap at the time.
Yep. I remember the rap Shaq era. It was around the same time that he was making like Kazam and Steel and like trying to break into being a movie star too, I think.
Yeah, there was like Shaq Fu.
I was going to say, wasn't this the Shaq Fu era
The video game? The video game?
Yeah.
Have you had the Shaq gummies?
No.
No? I'm gonna buy you guys some. They're good. They're like gummy bears, but they're little Shaq heads.
Oh my god.
The story went something like an agent had paired them up or something, and Shaq was like, yeah, let's do it. And so he got flown to meet Shaq and went down to like Orlando or wherever he was at the time, and said he went, and there was just like a party, like at a pool, and like what you would picture in like a movie scene or something, and like Shaq's there in like a lounge chair, and said like Billy goes and sits with him. But he said that basically it was like Shaq. He said it was very clear once he got there that Shaq just thought he was some dude, and
he didn't know who
no idea who he was. It was just like, you're trying to break in and like make a beat for me and stuff.
This is like mid 90s. This is like the Smashing Pumpkins at their peak. This is like Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness was out. Like, this is like as big as the Smashing Pumpkins ever were, probably.
Right. And to hear Billy tell it, he's just like sitting there like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, and so he was just pretty much just like, this is going nowhere. This is nothing. And so he went back home, and then he had been thinking about that beat. And so he sat down and just did like a little bit of time, used the beat for that song, and like wrote I.
So it started as a Shaquille O'Neal rap song and became the soundtrack to the bowling alley club, because that's when the song plays in the movie. It's during that scene. Man, Smashing Pumpkins had a big soundtrack year in 1997 because Batman and Robin was that year too.
Oh yeah, the end is the beginning is the end, or the beginning is the end is the beginning.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah. So we've got all these pretty iconic bands playing on the soundtrack. I mean, and some of them, like the Smashing Pumpkins song, are in the background of scenes, but others are like right kind of front and center. Like the Lou Reed song, which is a cover, is used pretty prominently. There's two different Rammstein songs, and they're both used incredibly well. I hinted to this earlier, but I love those needle drops. Like, they just hit hard. Like that second one where he walks into the porno party, and it's the porno with Marilyn Manson playing on the screen, and that Rammstein song hits. It's like, I cannot think of another song that would work as well in that scene. And I'm not saying that as some big fan of theirs. I mean, I remember liking Du Hast when it came out in the 90s, but I don't know what they're saying, so I don't listen to them a lot. but that song, like the way it hits, both of them, both times they're used in the movie, are just like perfect placement. It's really, really good stuff. I mean, the Marilyn Manson song is used really well. It's a really, really great soundtrack.
I remember it being very popular in the 90s, and I had the soundtrack, and I saw the movie, I think, I mentioned this earlier, but partially because of the soundtrack. And I was a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan, but I just loved all of the stuff that was on there. It just sounded like it'd be a blast. It's still one that I think I come back to every so often, just like it's just a fun soundtrack to listen to, and a real, like, it feels like it captures the mid-90s zeitgeist. Like it's pretty solid for that. So they definitely nailed it, because I don't think we've had a David Lynch movie yet that really Went hard on
No,
the soundtrack.
he uses music a lot in his films. Obviously, music plays a big part in his movies. I mean, Blue Velvet, obviously the song Blue Velvet, but also
Wild at
the
Heart.
well, also when they do was it Dreaming by the Roy Orbison song in Blue Velvet, and
It felt like the Marilyn Manson "I Put a Spell on." No. Sorry, Lou Reed
This Magic
doing
Moment.
This Magic Moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like that reminded me of like that's the song that would be in other David Lynch movies, like
Yeah.
taking like a pop song and like making it eerie, kind
Yeah.
of weird.
Yeah, but in his other movies, like music's always played a part. Wild at Heart, you mentioned that Elvis obviously is big, but there and also the metal that plays like at certain moments. Like music is huge, but this is the first time there's been like a soundtrack, like a and really the only time. Because he doesn't really do this again. It's really just this movie, but it fits this movie. That soundtrack is really one of the most iconic soundtracks of the 90s. Criterion Channel, as we're recording this, has a little collection on their streaming app called 90s Soundtracks or Iconic 90s Soundtracks or something like that. And it's just like a bunch of movies from the 90s that have iconic soundtracks, and Lost Highway is on the list. Lost Highway is included in that collection. And because this soundtrack doesn't just accompany Lost Highway, it really, and as the best soundtracks always do, it feels like an extension of the movie. You've got industrial noise, glam rock, brooding ballads, all bleeding together into the same disorienting, unstable atmosphere as the film itself.
And that Trent Reznor, I mean, and he was, like you said, he was at the height of his power. I'm picturing Trent Reznor, because when they were doing the sound stuff, that feels like the most Lynchian thing ever, because they were apparently in Reznor's studio in New Orleans.
Which is like a former funeral parlor.
But it's a formal like funeral home, yeah. So I was just picturing those two guys sitting in a former funeral home just talking about sounds. And then Reznor says like the directions were like, again, just like he does with the actors, I guess, is he said it would be like, all right, we need like, it's like insects swarming. And it's snakes are whizzing past your face.
I mean, that sounds abstract, but at the same time, like when you say that, I can picture those sounds from the movie, right? When we're watching those videotapes, and Trent Reznor and David Lynch just feel like a match made in heaven. Like that just seems like a perfect match. I'm honestly surprised. I'm sure he tried. I'm sure Trent Reznor tried to get David Lynch to direct a video for like The Perfect Drug or something like that. It's Mark Romanek, greatest music video director of all time, in my opinion, ended up directing that video. So it turned out pretty damn good. But I'm sure he tried to see if David Lynch would do it. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And also, I will say, not the last time we're going to see Trent Reznor during this. Our look at the work of David Lynch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I will say that as a producer for like the soundtrack album, it reminds me of things like when Kendrick did the Black Panther soundtrack or something like that, that it feels like they took it seriously and there's songs that really like match what's going on in the film. And so like I was thinking about songs like I'm Deranged, David Bowie and stuff like that. And
perfect,
And it just seems to kind of reinforce the whole theme of the movie.
And the song that, I mean, the songs that they picked that already existed, like I'm Deranged, which was out, that was on a David Bowie album before the movie. Even the songs that were written for the movie, like The Perfect Drug, I mean, the lyrics to that song, it could be Fred singing them. Yeah. So like I think more people in 1997 listened and bought the soundtrack than saw the movie. Like people, I would listen to the soundtrack before the movie. I owned the soundtrack before I saw the movie because I didn't see the movie till it was on video later on. But that just tells you how big the soundtrack album was. It was huge. Just as Lost Highway was wrapping up in post-production at the end of 1996, Lynch received some devastating news. His longtime friend Jack Nance had met a sudden and mysterious end. On the morning of December 29th, 1996, around 5 a.m., Nance got into a fight with two young men outside of a Winchell's Donut House in South Pasadena. Now, accounts on this differ, but it seems like he tried to call them out on their behavior. He wound up on the losing side of a scuffle. The next day, he showed up at a friend's house with a black eye, kind of joked. He's like, I guess I got what I deserved. He had kind of a swelling over his eye. And then the following morning, on December 30th, Nance was found dead in his apartment, collapsed on the bathroom floor. The coroner determined that he had died from blunt force trauma to the head, complicated by 2 recent strokes. His death was ruled a homicide, but the killers, to this day, have never been found. Now, for Lynch, who had first cast Nance in Eraserhead and worked with him for nearly 20 years, the loss was devastating. This was his friend. And for fans, it was a gut punch. Nance's small role in Lost Highway became unintentionally his final screen appearance for David Lynch. The story of Jack Nance's life is, I mean, it's kind of sad because we've talked about it before, his alcoholism being an issue. Like even going back to Eraserhead, he was an alcoholic and he had to, like David Lynch had to deal with that while they were filming Eraserhead. And he had actually gotten sober. He was sober for years. And then he married a woman that he met in rehab who was also an addict. They were both sober. She, I guess, relapsed, and he was off filming like Meatballs. Was it like Meatballs 4 or something like that? Some like straight to video thing. And he got a call from her that she had like a very distressing call. She basically she had relapsed and she was threatening to commit suicide.
Oh, jeez.
And then lightning struck and knocked the phones out, like as
Oh,
he was
no.
as he was talking to her. And when he got back to when he raced back home from set, and she was gone, she was dead. So I think that's when he started drinking again. And I don't know for sure that this like fight he was in was a result of him being drunk, but I think most people kind of assume that it's 5 a.m. and he's out
Yeah.
getting to a fight outside of a donut place, probably mouthing off at a couple of guys because he was inebriated. So it's sad because he's such a fun presence on film. He seems like such a good guy in interviews and stuff, but that just tells you, the power of addiction. It's sad, and it's sad that this ended up being his last movie. His last movie with Lynch. And it's even sadder that fucking Meatballs 4 ended up being his last movie. Like of all things, what a not exactly a legacy. But Nance's death cast a shadow over the film, obviously, because this was before the movie ever came out. It was a reminder of how closely Lynch's work was tied to this little family of collaborators that he'd built around him. And yet, as painful as it was, the work had to move forward. With post-production finally complete and tragedy still lingering in the background, Lost Highway was ready to make its way into the world. Lost Highway had its premiere in France in January of 1997, then screened at the Sundance Film Festival before trickling into U.S. theaters the following month. In America, it only opened on 12 screens when it first opened. Eventually expanded slightly, but never crossed over into a wide release. I don't know why that decision was made. I mean, it is kind of an art film. It's not exactly a blockbuster, even though it stars some well-known people. But I'm not sure why it was expanded so slightly. Worldwide, it ended up grossing just about $3.8 million. Remember, it's a $15 million budget, so far from a hit.
Yeah.
And another entry
that stings a bit.
Yeah, far from a hit. And another entry in what kind of looked like another in a streak of commercial failures for Lynch after Fire Walk with Me. And honestly, Wild at Heart had not done that well. Critics were just as divided as audiences. Roger Ebert, who had once championed Blue Velvet but hadn't really been very favorable to any of Lynch's work since, gave Lost Highway a thumbs down, as did his colleague, Mr. Siskel. But Ebert called it a movie made from the outside in, with plenty of style but little human connection. Janet Maslin in the New York Times dismissed it as incoherent, while others compared it unfavorably to Lynch's earlier work. But it had its defenders as well. Jonathan Rosenbaum in the Chicago Reader admired the film's nightmare logic, and European critics in particular were more receptive, praising it as a bold piece of avant-garde cinema. So the soundtrack to Lost Highway, like we mentioned before, it probably ended up reaching a far larger audience than the film itself. It sold really well on CD during the height of the 90s, like alt-rock boom. I mean, all these bands were pretty huge at the time. And it introduced Lost Highway to plenty of people who might have never seen the movie otherwise.
You see, kids, CD stands for compact disc. A long time ago, they used to put them on CDs. Never mind.
I just gave up on that one, huh?
Yep.
I
They're
mean,
not all gems. Sorry.
I remember watching this one, but I don't remember like when that was. But I remember being very aware of it because of the soundtrack. In the years since its original release, Lost Highway has undergone a pretty major reappraisal. What baffled audiences and many critics in 1997 dismissed as incoherent or indulgent is now seen in critical circles as a deliberate fracture, a Mobius strip of narrative that loops endlessly back on itself. Today, Lost Highway is widely seen as a turning point in Lynch's career, the bridge between the suburban nightmares of Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks and the fractured dreamscapes of Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire. Over time, the film's reputation has only grown even further. But that doesn't mean that it's gotten any easier to pin down. People have been arguing about Lost Highway for almost 30 years now. What it means, what it's doing, whether it's even supposed to make sense at all. So I want us to get into it. I want us to give our thoughts on Lost Highway and try to figure out what the hell we think Lost Highway means. Because I actually texted you guys ahead on this one, letting you know, like, I want you guys to think about this, like, because this is a movie that you can ask 5 different people what they think is happening in Lost Highway, and you might get 5 different answers. So I texted you guys. I was like, I'm going to ask you, like, what is your thought on what's going on here? What's happening here? So what do you think's going on here? Like if you had to describe exactly like the not the plot, but like what Lost Highway is about, what's your interpretation?
To me, Lost Highway is about denial. A lot of it is Fred can't live with what he's doing, so he rage quits. This is my take on it. He rage quits reality and rewrites himself as this younger, cooler guy who gets everything he thinks he wants, but it's a loop. The fantasy starts to unravel as he goes. He starts to get that guilt coming back, and ends up right back where he started, basically. And that's kind of the Lost Highway. Like, he's just forever on this road of this cycle he's trapped in, and that's it. And he's just stuck there. I was reading the philosophy of David Lynch, and it gave some really good points on like Zen Buddhism in this movie. And it was talking about how, basically like in Zen Buddhism, part of one of the things like that they try to work on is like, I mean, again, I'm not a monk or a Buddhist or whatever, so, don't hold this against me if I get it completely wrong. But basically, Zen says like the whole mind versus body thing, good versus evil, all of that is bullshit in Zen Buddhism. Everything is one. And so it's really like it tries to tell you that there's no dualism in this. So I feel like it's like that's what's ripping Fred in half is this he feels like there's this split self or something, or he's trying to make this split self, but the movie's trying to say that that's an illusion that doesn't exist. And you're this one thing. And that philosophy of David Lynch lays it out a little bit better than that. But there's that part. There's also a thing in Zen Buddhism about desire. That desire equals suffering. Like craving or wanting for something is the root of misery. And so Fred's paranoia about Renee and needing to own her and know her secrets, it's a classic like trap for him. Even when he tries to reboot as Pete, he's still chasing this unattainable woman. He's still wanting for her. And the lesson for him is that's where his issues are. He can't obtain this thing that he's looking for because he desires it too much, basically. And yeah, and then essentially like there's his whole transformation in general is just like him trying to escape the self. But a lot of Zen Buddhism about you learning to live with the self, those dual things about yourself, not having these dual things, that it's all one, it's all a part of you, and learning to accept that and that sort of thing. And then also the person pointed out that one of the big things in Zen Buddhism is a koan, which is Zen masters love a riddle with no answer. So they literally, that's a thing they do in Zen Buddhism, that you don't solve the puzzle. It's about the process of trying to solve a puzzle is more important than actually solving the puzzle. And so
sounds very David Lynchian, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say it feels like Lynch pulled a lot of things from this, but essentially I think that's what I feel like it's about. I feel like...
My microphone isn't picking up the sound of my eyes rolling, is it?
Wow.
Sorry.
Well, there you go. I guess it's your turn then, Todd. What did you think of David Lynch's The Lost Highway or Lost Highway?
Best I can do is without spoiling my further viewing, the best I can do is it's a time loop. Because anything else isn't strong enough to hold water for any length of time. But there is a clear time loop. So if you dig time loop stories,
but what about
Star Trek's full of them. So
what about like the switch in protagonist? Like, what's your take on that?
I mean,
that's a pretty major part of
switches, but does he? Like, it's not super clear whether he.
Not?
Is that in his head or is that not? There's not really a clear cut answer to why any of this is even happening. So I was like, okay, I can't focus on that, or if there's not a clear answer, okay, we'll set that aside. The one thing I could concretely say was that there's a time loop, and
Right, but
that's about
as
as much as I've got.
But as you're watching the movie, you're not thinking like, what does this mean when he switches into a different person? Like, what's
No.
no? That's the whole fucking movie. Like, what? Like,
I kept waiting for the okay, so why?
that's what it's your job to figure out.
Okay. I disagree with you. They put all this stuff out there and figure that we're just all gonna put it together and get it.
It's a
And,
matter
like,
of you being able to.
we just went through so many reviews and watched the behind the scenes. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody. So that should not be a shock that I'm like, I don't know what it means. I've thought about it, but like any sort of answer about why he's changing and why he changes back, like, is dispelled by something else in the movie. So I have to set that aside. And the only thing you can really grab onto is that there's a time loop. So that's where I'm at.
The idea of just setting that aside is insane to me, because it means that you're just like not even trying to engage with what the movie is doing. Like, you're just, because it's not being spoon fed to you, you're just saying, I don't care, because it's requiring a little bit of work out of you as a viewer. To me, that's an insane way to watch any movie. You shouldn't dismiss a movie just because it refuses to spoon feed you.
Well, I mean, remember, I had to set aside that this was any sort of cohesive narrative. And I do respect the technical things that it's doing. I'm not dismissing this. I don't like it, but I'm not dismissing it. It's a technical achievement. It does look good. It looks great. I don't know what it's about. There's a time loop. That much I know for sure. Everything else is up to interpretation. So
Right. What I'm asking is, what is your interpretation?
I don't have one. It could be psychological. That's not explained. It could be extraterrestrial. That's not explained. Like, nothing is given weight to anything here. It's all just kind of like this random guy turns into somebody else, then turns back. There's a woman who might be two people. We don't know. He's involved with a mobster who, frankly, puffs himself up to be this tough guy, and yet our guy who's not a tough guy gets the drop on him in this hotel. The house blows up. There's a guy with a video camera. None of that comes to any sort of logical or even out there conclusion. There's no conclusion to any of it. I don't know what it's about. I have no thoughts about this movie. I've tried to think about it. I've tried to put this together. I can't come up with a reason for any of it.
So that was going to be my question, is actually like, because I know, like, if like the wife and I watch a movie or something, and then like it's not exactly clear, like we'll have the conversation after, like, what did you think of that? What's going on there? Or like she'll sometimes be like, I'm going to need you to think about that and tell me what we just saw, that kind of thing, and just what's my opinion on it or something. So we have those discussions. So I was going to ask, do you just not go any further with it? But it sounds like you said you did try to like think about it afterwards.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't like imagine, because I feel like, and I'm not saying this as like an insult to you. I just mean, because maybe it hits people different, and I haven't always immediately gotten everything we've watched. So, but to me, this one is one of the more straightforward ones, or it felt like it, but maybe I just took everything for granted. To me, I know there's other meanings, but to me, it felt as though it was clear that he was reimagining things to me. That's what I'm saying. So I get that it's not going to be that way for everybody, but it just felt like, okay, boom, he's a different person. Or it took a little bit to get there, but I just kind of decided that was what was happening. He was trying to imagine living his life a different way and being a different person.
And there are clues to that, because within the Pete section of the movie, there are like lines of dialogue that we hear that are repeated, that we hear that are said to Fred earlier on, that those are clearly like things that are still in his mind that he's now hearing other characters say. So there are clues to that throughout the film. It's just that the movie, it does require something of you as a viewer. This is not a movie where you can just turn your brain off and give up. It's a two-way street between you and the director. And it feels like a lot of, a lot of the pushback that you personally put on all of these David Lynch movies really is that you don't like it when the puzzle pieces are given to you, but the picture on the front of the puzzle box isn't there for you to figure out exactly what it's supposed to all look like. The pieces are still there. That doesn't mean that this is like bad storytelling or anything like that. It's just a different style of storytelling. It's a different way of experiencing a movie rather than going to whatever, Blockbuster is playing right now that you can just zone out and get everything because it's a movie designed for you to be able to you're dicking around on your phone while it plays and you still know what's going on. This movie requires you to engage in it even after you've seen the movie and reckon with what you've seen. And a lot of David Lynch's movies are like so. But before I give like my interpretation, I wanted to mention that how when we talked about our last movie, Fire Walk with Me, I kind of mentioned it as a pivotal point in Lynch's career because on one hand, it was sort of his way of putting a bow, not a very nicely tightly tied one, but a bow on the TV series that made him a household name. But on the other hand, it did continue his obsession with exposing the underbelly of small town America, kind of showing us that beneath the picturesque facade is something a lot darker. That's been a recurring theme through most of these David Lynch movies. But with that movie, and especially in that bifurcated structure that it has with the Deer Meadow sequence at the beginning, then going into Laura's story, something began to shift in Lynch's storytelling. His movies are no longer populated by detectives solving a mystery. Think of like Cooper or Jeffrey Beaumont in Blue Velvet. They are there to solve a mystery. With his movies after Fire Walk with Me, we, the audience, are the detectives. We are tasked with piecing together fragments without a guarantee of neat answers. And it makes the act of watching itself part of the puzzle. Lynch hands us the clues, but he's not going to give us the key. And you have to accept that that's the way that you have to watch these movies. Now, in the years since Fire Walk with Me, Lynch moved away from the kind of small towns and suburbs of his earlier work, and he spent the rest of his career in the urban sprawl of Los Angeles. This is the beginning. This is what's kind of considered his unofficial Los Angeles trilogy, his LA trilogy, this, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire. So his settings have changed and his techniques have shifted a little bit in the way that he tells his stories, but its core message has stayed the same, and that's that not everything is what it seems. And with this shift, his films do start to feel less like conventional narratives to be solved and more like a state of mind to be endured. So one of the books that I read for this is David Lynch, a retrospective. It's one that I've used at the beginning of our first David Lynch series, written by Ian Nathan. Ian Nathan describes Lost Highway as the first film in Lynch's uncompromising era. Because you've still got all the Lynchian signatures here. You've got the doppelgangers, the fractured reality, the collision of sex and violence, all the things that we've seen throughout his filmography. But they are pushed into a more abstract space here, almost hostile to neat interpretation. Not every piece is going to fit perfectly. And Lynch has always toyed with audience expectation, going back shit to his short films, if you want to go all the way back. Usually when you sit down to watch a movie, there's kind of an unspoken contract between you and the filmmaker, that the story is going to follow certain rules. Like you might not know exactly what's going to go on when you watch a movie, but you trust that you'll be able to follow the cause and effect. But with Lynch's films, and especially with Lost Highway, Lynch just kind of rips that contract to shreds, and instead of plot logic, the film runs on psychological logic. It's the rhythms of denial and repression of a guilty mind spinning whole realities to avoid the truth. So it's not fully logical from a plot sense because that's not how brains work. That's not how psychology works. So you have to be able to watch the movie on a level other than just like wanting all the plot pieces to fall into place. And when you watch something like Blue Velvet or Fire Walk with Me, you might be hit with plenty of like surreal imagery. But I think I even talked about this during Blue Velvet. I think the basic plot is still pretty easy to follow. Like you can follow it from plot point A to B to C. I mean, weird things will pop up here and there where you're like, well, what the fuck does that mean? But you're following the plot pretty simply. But with Lost Highway, Lynch does push that a little bit further. Gary said he thinks it's one of the more straightforward ones. I actually don't agree with that. I think that Lynch is pushing he's challenging the very idea of storytelling itself with this movie, with the way that he structures it. Because even if you do manage to piece together a coherent plot, which I do think is possible with this movie, there are always elements that resist rational explanation, and maybe that's where your pushback comes from, where it's like you've got the certain things do fit together, but then there are the other things that you're like, well, what? I don't know, where does this fit into this other stuff? And sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine. For some people, that's very frustrating, and I understand that. But for others, including for like film scholars and critics who have written about it over the years, that resistance isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Because this is a movie that invites you to live inside of all of its contradictions rather than to try to solve them. And to me, that's exciting. Do you guys find that freeing or more frustrating? I feel like Todd's going to lead on the side of frustrating, but do you like having that kind of ambiguity, or do you want the rules to be clearer when you watch something?
If you don't know to piece this together, then yeah, you're probably going to be frustrated. Like it's not going to connect. You're just going to walk out of there frustrated of what the fuck did I just watch?
But
none of it makes sense.
He's not like giving you a blank canvas. He's giving you very specific moods and images and rhythms. The work is in how we put them together, not in filling in for lack of story, because there is a story here.
Okay.
I think I do get that, like, if you don't expect, like, I do think I'm at an advantage that I am in a David Lynch series right now, and I've seen a bunch of David Lynch, and so I kind of know what to expect from him.
But Todd's also seen a lot of David Lynch. He's seen just as much as you have.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess I was saying I can understand the argument for, like, if somebody's walking in off the street and they're like thinking they're watching Ratatouille and they got Lost Highway, and they're like, wait, it's not about cooking at all. Anyway, they could be confused. Like, I don't know where this plot's going. Or
a single cooking scene in this. Where are the rats?
I will say, I mean, it did remind me of a David Lynch quote I had seen where they had asked him something like, you know, what would he say to people who thinks the things don't make sense or whatever? And he's like, I get ideas, I put them down, they throw me. And he's like, you may say that people look for meaning in everything, but they don't. They've got a whole life going on around them, and they don't look for meaning there. They look for meaning when they go to a movie. I don't know why people expect art to make sense all the time when they accept the fact that life doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's a very, very famous David Lynch quote, but an apt one, I think. One of the most common readings of this movie, and one that I pretty much subscribe to, and one that both Gifford and sort of uncharacteristically Lynch have mentioned in interviews, is that Fred finds himself in what's called a psychogenic fugue. Lynch and Gifford claimed that they had never heard that term while writing the film. It was only pointed out to them on set by a publicist. But they realized, after learning about it, that what they were writing was exactly that. Like, the description of a psychogenic fugue fit exactly the concept that they were going for. Now, a psychogenic fugue is a kind of disassociative break, where someone who's under some sort of extreme duress or stress basically blanks out and creates a new identity for themselves. So they it's a type of, I don't want to call it amnesia, but it's you basically reinvent who you are in your own mind. In Lost Highway, Fred, who's unable to cope with the fact that he has brutally murdered his wife, retreats into a fugue state and becomes Pete Dayton. From that point on, when the switch is made, we're seeing Fred's fantasy of another life. So that's what I think this movie is. And it kind of ties directly into Lynch's reoccurring themes of doubling and fractured identities. We've seen it before. We talked about it during Fire Walk with Me. You've got Laura Palmer. You've got the obvious things, like you've got Maddie and Laura, who were played by the same actress. So there's that. But also Laura Palmer, the character, is sort of torn between the homecoming queen mask that she wears and her darker reality of who she is, outside of that. That's not exactly a fugue state, but it is the same territory. Characters who are unable to reconcile two truths, so their minds sort of split under the pressure. And Fred, you mentioned this early on when we were talking about the Bill Pullman's performance, I believe, Gary. But Fred drops a line early on in the movie that feels like Lynch's Rosetta Stone for the whole movie. It's when the cops come to investigate the videotapes. They ask him if he owns a video camera. He says he doesn't. And he says it's because I like to remember things my own way, not necessarily the way that they happened. And that's the whole movie. That's the key. That's the whole movie in a nutshell. This is memory as self-deception. You do see cracks in Fred's psyche throughout the first part of the film, most clearly in the appearance of the mystery man. Like his first appearance, that we joked about earlier, but his first appearance comes right after Fred. Fred and Renee are in bed. Fred is just underperformed in bed. Like you see Renee kind of pat him on the back, saying it's okay. It's kind of patronizing. Like instead of him being reassured, it almost lands like a threat to his masculinity because they don't flat out say it, but it's highly implied that he's impotent. And that's when Fred sees the mystery man's face over hers. That's his like rage and humiliation personified. Like the mystery man is the devil on Fred's shoulder, pushing him towards violence. And then he fully manifests himself at the party a little bit later at Andy's house, right as Fred sees Renee kind of flirting with Andy. So Fred's already been suspicious. We see that in like the very first scene of the movie, that Fred's been a little suspicious that she's cheating on him. But this, at least in his mind, is proof that she's being unfaithful. And so this mystery man, Fred's rage, his violent impulses, step forward into the flesh. That's how I read the mystery man, at least. So what do you guys make of him? Do you think he's an actual figure, like some kind of, I don't know, demon or devil? Like Robert Blake said he wanted to play him demonic. Do you see him as a literal demon or something more abstract?
I definitely took him as part of his psyche for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody else seems to see him, even at the party. Like the only moment when somebody, like he points at him on the stairs, he's like, who is that guy on the stairs? And the guy he's talking to Andy at the time, I think. And he says, oh, that's a friend of Dick Laurent's. I'm not sure what his name is. But there are multiple guys on that stair.
Yeah, that's how I landed too. Which you're going back to that split self thing. And that whole section of his psyche we talked about, like the different broken pieces. It seems like he's developing his own world and his own reality, just in general, for everything.
And it's not long after that scene at the party that Fred receives the third videotape, which shows him crouched over Renee's dismembered body. I think with that revelation, seeing that video, seeing himself, I think that's when his mind finally breaks. Like he is arrested, he's sent to prison, and it's there, sitting in that prison cell, confronting what he's done, that the rupture occurs. And Lynch visualizes this in a really cool way that you noted the electricity earlier, Gary.
Right.
But you also get this blast of blinding white light coming through the top of his cell. And it's the same motif that we saw in Fire Walk with Me, shining down on Laura just as she prepared to confront Bob, if you remember, towards the end of the movie. In Lynch's world, I feel like this bright white light, it symbolizes like a rip in reality. In Lost Highway, it's the instant where perception shifts, where Fred collapses and Pete is born, where his reality changes into something else. Now, I was thinking about the Mobius strip thing that you see referenced often when people are talking about the structure of this film. And I started thinking that, I think you could argue, and this is just something that I don't know if anyone else, I'm sure there are other people smarter than me who have thought of this, but I think you could argue that the entire movie, not just the part after the rip, takes place in Fred's head. That even the first 45 minutes are already a part of his self-created purgatory. Like it would explain the dreamlike quality of those early scenes, because those early scenes are very dreamlike and languid, and people talk and move slower than they do in real life. Kind of has the same dreamlike quality that most of Eraserhead has. It also explains those scenes with the mystery man showing up. But to me, the whole movie feels like it could be Fred's punishment. Like he's reliving his darkest moments over and over again.
You think he's like a jailer, like institutionalized
or dead.
Something?
No, I think he's dead.
Oh, you just think he's dead?
I think he's dead.
Playing it.
Yeah, so that Mobius strip structure where the end is the beginning is the end, makes sense. It makes sense through that lens because, Fred killed his wife because he believed that she was unfaithful. Whether she actually was is irrelevant. He believes that she is, so he kills her. And he's guilty, and he's executed. And in death, he invents a fantasy where he becomes Pete, who is this young, virile, and like irresistible to women. I mean, the cops joke about that throughout the movie about how much tail he's getting, So like the opposite of Fred, who's impotent. But even in this fantasy, his insecurities break through. Like in that desert sex scene at the end, Alice tells him flat out, she says, "You'll never have me." And that line is sort of a crack in this dream world that he's created. Like even in this idealized world, Fred still gets rejected. Like he's still getting rejected. And so the illusion collapses and Fred reverts back into himself from Pete to Fred. And he returns to that highway, the lost highway, which I think could symbolize death. He's doomed to drive forever, as David Bowie's fittingly a song called "I'm Deranged" plays on the radio, and the film ends exactly where it began, with him on the highway with that same song playing, because it plays at the beginning and it plays at the end. Because for Fred, there's no escape. It's a cycle of guilt and denial that he's condemned to relive for eternity. So that's another reading that I thought of while I was watching the film, that this could be a literal purgatory. Because when we see him in the car at the end, in that final like chase scene, we see him get electrocuted. That's Fred being put to death in the electric chair. We see him in the car. We see a bright light. We see him zapped. We see him shudder. Like, that's Fred being electrocuted, and then he's dead. And then he just has to relive it over and over again to the point where he dies again.
Interesting.
Yeah, you could see it as a literal purgatory, or it could just be a psychological spiral. And it's the fun thing about this movie is that there's no right or wrong answer here. Like with all of Lynch's films, answers are subjective, and to me, that's part of the thrill of watching them, is because you can think about these things. And because he's given you so much to think about, that you can piece together your own theories on it. And he won't tell you if they're right or wrong, because if it's right to you, then it's right. That's what he believes. Like, your interpretation is your interpretation. So to you, that's the true interpretation.
So I'm right.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, you didn't have an interpretation, so you had zero
I
interpretation.
sure did. There isn't
Oh.
one.
That's not an
my
interpretation. That's a
So
cop
I'm
out.
right.
No, that's a cop out. That's a non-answer.
Okay.
I'll take it, Todd. I believe you.
Thank you.
What was your interpretation?
Mine?
It's
Yeah.
a time loop and there's no
Time loop.
interpretation.
It's a time loop.
What about the Fred turning into Pete thing?
I don't know. Can't answer that.
So that's not an interpretation.
You warp in a time loop. You just look different. It's just a thing. It's the rules. The rules this universe established.
I mean, but do you see the film more as Fred's literal purgatory, or as more of a psychological spiral, or something else?
I took it as psychological, but I like your interpretation there.
I
can see
definitely
that.
see it as a psychological thing. I don't think the mystery man is a demon.
I don't think he's a literal demon. I still, even in that purgatory interpretation, I still think that he is a figment of, I don't want to say a figment of Fred's imagination. I think he is a symbol of Fred's violent tendencies, because he's tempting him. He's the one who pushes him to do what he does.
Yeah.
I think it's the people. This is David Lynch after having paid all those people, like I said at the beginning of this movie, like that he paid people to come around randomly and say weird shit to him. I think this is about him experiencing that, not remembering how many people he did that to. So his day-to-day life is just weird shit happening because he's just confused.
I do think this is one of Lynch's, it is his, more than any other movie of his, that at least ones that we've talked about so far, I feel like there's more like scholarly writing about it, like film critics, because it is so open to interpretation. Mulholland Drive really is too, but I feel like this one might even have more, because Mulholland Drive, I think it's easier to come to a conclusion on what it's actually about. I think it's a little more concrete than it is here, whereas here it's a little more open. And I think that a lot of film critics, scholars, and philosophers like to write about this movie, because those are the questions that like a philosopher likes to ask. You know, what does it all mean? And because there's not one answer, coming up with answers based on the tools that you're given, based on the things that David Lynch is presenting to you, is a fascinating way to experience a movie to me. Todd doesn't agree. And you're not the only one. I mean, Gary, in our further viewing segment on our Cinema Shock Plus episode, Gary read plenty of people who said this movie wasn't about anything. So there are a lot of people that think that. But I'm basing this on your experience with all of these David Lynch projects that we've talked about, because none of them really give you all the answers. And it feels like your frustration stems from them being, for lack of a better term, difficult.
We've talked a lot on the show about what are the filmmakers' goals? What is their intention? What are they trying to say? What are their goals? And a lot of times we end up judging that film by how well they accomplish their goals. True?
Yeah.
If the goal is to show the dark, seedy underbelly of the world, I don't need to be reminded of that. I'm well aware of this world's darkness. So that's not what I'm looking for when I go to watch a film. And again, if I don't know that going in, I come out frustrated of just like, well, okay, if I want a confusing thing, I'll just live my life. That happens all the time. So, it's nice to have something that has a concrete end. Someone gets to ride off into the sunset. That's a nice break from reality to let your soul rest for a second before you go back out there into the world. Because I keep hearing like, what a great storyteller, and all these big ideas that are being, and all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's still this dark, seedy underbelly. And it's like, okay, anything else?
I mean, I understand that because I don't always want to watch. Sometimes I just want to watch a silly action movie and turn my brain off.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that every movie has to be that experience. I mean, that's the great thing about art, is that there are so many experiences that you can get from it. You can look at a let's say a Pablo Picasso painting, and you can look at a Thomas Kinkade painting. They're both talented artists in their own way, but they're working towards different ends, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the great thing about art. Not everything has to be the same, and not every experience has to be the same. There's nothing wrong with watching movies where you're just having a good time. But not every movie has to be a turn your brain off, have a good time movie. Like, art can and should challenge you at times.
Okay.
I guess, are you saying that that's like never a mood you're in, or I don't know, like, because I'm looking at it like, I know that there are great songs out there. Somebody that really loves classical music is gonna like, I don't Bach or Mozart or something like that, and they're gonna look at like Ariana Grande as like, what the hell is this? Like, this is garbage. And some people that love Ariana Grande are not gonna like classical, and they may never cross over. They may never like listen to either. I guess what I'm saying is there's like, I'm okay with both.
Right. You can enjoy both depending on the mood that you're in. Like, I'll go listen to sad bastard music any day of the week. Like, I'll go listen to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And then an hour later, I might be in the mood to listen to Taylor Swift. It's not dismissing either one of them. They're different experiences, but they both are, depending on what I'm in the mood for. I don't think that means I should only enjoy Taylor Swift.
Well, and I guess where I was going with it is that what you're saying, Todd, that like you feel like you're more drawn to the pop music than
I think that's
the other
fair.
stuff?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
There's definitely been more artsier films. There's been David Lynch films that I've enjoyed. Not many of them. I did like Elephant Man,
which is a fucking sad movie. Like,
It
the
is sad.
That is a good point.
It's sad.
like the saddest of all of his movies, except for Fire Walk with Me.
It's got a beginning, middle, and an end. It tells this story, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, it's a dark reminder, but it comes together. There's no question about what this is, and it's a reminder for us to be good to people. Lost Highway isn't a reminder for anything. It's not a call to action to live your life better. It's
not
just,
every movie is, and not every movie should be. That would be boring.
True. But if you're asking why I don't like this, here's why.
It's just that you're basically saying like that the more, I don't want to say it like with it sounding like an intelligence thing or something. I feel like when I say like the more artistic, that's not how I mean it like in a pretentious way. I just mean like more artsy,
less conventional.
Less conventional, is going to be your thing. Like you want it to be straightforward anytime you're in a movie. It's like you don't want that other kind.
I don't know that I fully agree with that either. There's been a lot of artsy films that I really enjoy. But like I said earlier in the episode, for the technical stuff that's going on here, I respect the hell out of this movie. I don't like it, but I can respect it. That's what I got.
If you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, taste is subjective. I'm just, I guess, trying to figure out what it is about these movies that causes you to push back on them so hard. And it sounds, based on your description, that it's less along the lines of content, as far as like it being dark or light or whatever, which you were kind of hinting at. But it sounds more like it's based on storytelling structure and whether a movie gives you that typical beginning, middle, end. I know how everything wraps up. There's a nice, neat bow on it at the end. And if there's any sort of transgressiveness in the way that the story is told, then that is difficult for you to accept. Would that be fair to say?
Like, let's look at Inception, because it does come to an end. There's stuff going on there in the script, even with the characters' names that are very heady concepts. And God, you want to talk about dream logic? Like, it's built on stuff happening in dreams. But the very, very end does end on a question. Is this a dream or isn't it?
It does, but the movie still has a definitive like ending to its
Yes, both.
story.
It has both.
Yeah.
I'd watch that all the time. Love it.
Yeah, that's a
Great.
pretty, I mean, that's still coming to a conventional ending, even if there is a tag on the end of it that makes you question things. You're still getting that beginning, middle, end to the plot that's laid out within the movie.
I was gonna say the story is definitely still more straightforward than
Yeah.
Lynch stuff.
The
you know?
story's more straightforward, but at the end of it is just kind of like, how real can your dreams be? How real are your dreams? Like, that's a pretty heady concept that you can spend a lot of time trying to dissect. So, as opposed to what we get here, where nothing is really clear cut. I mean, except for the fact that we're pretty sure Mystery Man's not a demon, and that there is some sort of time loop, whether it's a real one or a psychological one, is up for debate. I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea.
Like I said, art is subjective, but I do think art does also have the ability to, it doesn't always have to be happy. Art shouldn't all be happy. I think, and if you don't enjoy that type of art, that's fine.
I mean, it's not going to be for everybody, that's for sure. I mean, I don't think that I really understood David Lynch like as much at first. I've come around on him now. Like, not that I hated him or anything. I guess I get sometimes the feeling of being frustrated with a movie that's not more straightforward, which I think is what I was talking about way before. Like, if you go to a movie expecting one thing and you get something like this, I could see that being off-putting, because some people are going to see a movie that it's, I don't remember this movie being marketed particularly as some kind of confusing thing. It's people were promoting it, like when you look back on the interviews, it's like being very scary, and it was like this dark and twisted movie, which it is, but not in the way I think if people were like coming in like thinking like a thriller or a horror movie or something, with the mystery man looking like a demon, then you probably weren't completely happy. But if you come in like knowing you're watching David Lynch, you are probably like, hell yeah, this is what I signed up for.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about this movie all day, which I think it's a testament to the movie, that any movie that can get you talking like this, I mean, it's got something going for it. That's why, like I said before, that there has probably been more writing about this movie than any other David Lynch movie. Probably maybe any other movie that we've talked about on this podcast, to be honest, as far as like people like delving into the psychology and the philosophy behind it, which I think is fascinating. But so we could talk about it all day, but we won't. We'll move on. So Lost Highway, while it may have stumbled at the box office, it did quietly find a second life on VHS. Like so many Lynch projects, it was on the small screen in living rooms late at night that the movie really seeped into people's imaginations. And that's where it built its cult following, long before critics came around to call it a masterpiece of fractured identity and surreal storytelling. And guys, I think that's going to do it for this episode. I think that's it for Lost Highway. I think we have talked plenty about it. I think people will have plenty to listen to on this one, because this is a movie that, again, you could talk about it for hours and still just go in the same kind of loop that Fred's going in. Just over and over. But I think we'll wrap it up here. Now, if you do want more, as always, consider joining Cinema Shock Plus. Our supporters get the full extended cut of every episode, complete with our bonus segments. We just did Somebody Needs a Nap and our further viewing for this one. Plus early access, discounts on merch. We've got a lot of new merch in the shop. Even the uncut video of our recording sessions. So Cinema Shock Plus subscribers also get exclusive access to Fire Shock with Me, which is our Twin Peaks watch-along show, which is a great way to support the show and help us keep digging into these movies. So if you want to join, head to cinemashock.net/plus for all the details. I think that wraps it up for this one, guys. Next time, we're going to be looking at a film that couldn't be more different than Lost Highway, although there is a road involved. In 1999, David Lynch surprised just about everyone with a movie called The Straight Story, which is a gentle, heartfelt road movie released by Disney. Yep, believe it or not. It is the only G-rated film of his career, and yet it still manages to feel unmistakably Lynchian. Although I think this might end up being Todd's favorite of this series. So
I have high hopes. So
I've only seen it Straight Story one time, so I'm least familiar with this than any other movie that we're talking about, and it's been 20 years probably since I watched it, so I don't remember a whole lot about it. I remember it being sweet. I don't remember much else. There's a lawnmower. So
that's about as much as I know from the trailer.
yeah. Oh, you watched the trailer?
I did watch the trailer, so I'm that far ahead.
All right, well, there you go. You're ready for it. That one's a little harder to
I've
find.
heard nothing.
You've heard nothing?
Yeah,
Well,
I've heard nothing.
there's a lawnmower. Well, spoiler. It's on the poster. Anyway, fellas, excellent talking to you about The Lost Highway today. Let our listeners know where you can be found on the internet if they want to hear you talk about other things.
I hope you do. And I am at This Is Gary Horn.
I'll be performing in the New South Comedy Festival, November 5th through the 9th. For details and tickets, go to newsouthcomedy.com, and I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on Instagram.
I'm at Justin_Bishop on most of the social media things. You can find the show at cinema_shock, or just search Cinema Shock anywhere. Look for that purple and gold logo, or head to cinemashock.net where you can find links to everything. Social media, Discord. Our Discord is open to all anyone who wants to join, although there are exclusive sections in our Discord that are exclusive to Cinema Shock Plus folks. You can find links to our merch on our website at cinemashock.net. And again, if you're a Cinema Shock Plus member, you get discounts on all of that merch, but anyone can buy it, anyone who wants to. So head over there, see all the episodes, go listen to Fire Shock with me and hear how much Todd loves Twin Peaks. Until next time,
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
and be excellent to each other.
Don't tailgate! Don't you fucking ever tailgate! Do you know how much space is needed to stop a car traveling at 35 miles an hour? 6 car lengths! 6 fucking car lengths! That's 106 fucking feet, Johnny! If I had to stop suddenly, you would have hit me! I want you to get the fucking keys, and I want you to study those motherfuckers, and I want you to obey the goddamn rules of the road. 50 fucking thousand people were killed on the highways last year because of fucking assholes like you. Tell me you're gonna get the keys.
That's, slow clap for that one.
Thank you.
That was,
I feel like Todd got out all of his aggression
He
about having
did.
to watch Lost
I
Highway.
said I'll be performing at the New South Comedy Festival November 5th through the 9th.
it's just going to be a one-man recreation of Lost Highway, beginning to
That's
end.
it.
Todd's playing all the parts. He's playing Fred, Pete, Renee, Alice, Mr. Eddie,
I'm getting
Laurent,
completely
the
new.
Mystery
Yeah.
Man, all of them. He's playing everybody.
I thought you were about to name every person in this movie.
Marilyn Manson, Twiggy Ramirez, Richard Pryor.
Oh God, that's the only person I really have an issue with is portraying Richard Pryor. I could never be the comedy legend.
No, nobody can. And don't do blackface.
No.